Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Ghana Ghanatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganata Praptasya Kalyana Gurnanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Praptasya Kalyana Gurnanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Mahaprabhu Kir Tana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu Tana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Bande Guru Shri Charanarvrindam Romanchakam Pashutarangavajo Bande Guru Shri Charanarvrindam Shri Vigrahara Dhananityanana Shringaratanman Niramarjanado Shri Vigrahara Juktasya bhaktamsya niyunjatapi Bande Guru Shri Charanarvrindam Juktasya bhaktamsya niyunjatapi Bande Guru Shri Charanarvrindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Swatana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sanghan Bhagavat Prasada Swatana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sanghan Kridvaiva Tripte Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanarvrindam Shiradikama Dabayara Para Madhurya Lila Gunarupa Namna Shri Radhikama Dabayara Para Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalopasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvrindam Ne kunjayono ratikeli siddhai Jayali bher yuktir apekshaniya Tatrati daksha atibalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvrindam Sakchadharitena Shamastashrashre Uktastatthava Vyattaiva Sadvi Vena Shamastashrashre Uktastatthava Kintu Prabhoja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrinda Kintu Prabhoja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrinda Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi Yasya prasada Bhagavat prasada Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi Dayam stubam tasya yashastrin sandam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Dhyayam stubam tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Nama O Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunabadi Pachata Deshatarine Namaste Sarasate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyapadi Pasata Deshata Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gora Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Gadadhara Shivasari Gora Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Bolo Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Bolo Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Hare Yaraya Namah, Krishna Jadavaya Namah, Hare Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha, Gopal Govindaram Shrimadhusudan, Giridhara Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan. Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita. Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna. Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Shri Shri Gaurnita, Gauranita, Patita Pavana Gauranita. Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadrama Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Radhe Nila Madhav Jaya Sitaram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Sitaram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Netai Gaur Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Sai Gaur Pramanande Hari Haribo. Jai Vishnupada Paramahansa Prabhupada Astutara Sarashishimad ISKCON Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Siramani Gaura Priyajana Krishna Prema Bhakti Datta Patita Pavana His Divine Grace Abhacharavina Bhakti Viranta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhari Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhakti Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhakta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Jai Param Dayal Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Jai Pramanam Sankirtane Ka Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinandana Shriman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mavrana Avatar Ki Jai Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankirtan Yaga Ki Jai Jugadharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Brihat Nidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopina Radha Kund Syama Kund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Brajabhum Vrindavan Mathurudham Ki Jai Dear Lordship Shri Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulasi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Bolo Shri Mati Radharani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Nitai Gurari Pramanande. All glories to the Assembly Bodies. All glories to the Assembly Bodies. All glories to the Assembly Bodies. All glories, glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gauranga. Namaste Narasingaya.
Namaste Narasingaya.
Pralada da hine.
तुलसी अल्कोहल
Hiranyakashipu Bhaksha Silatanka nakalaye Silatanka nakala Ito Nishingha Parato Nishingha Ito Nishingha Parato Nishingha Jato jato jamitato Nishingha Jato jato jamitato Bahir Nishingha Hrudaye Nishingha Bahir Nishingha Hrudaye Narashingamadim Sharanam Prapade Narashingamadim Sharanam Prapade Tabakara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam Kesavadruta Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare He Prabhu Jai Jagadisha Hare Abakara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam Keshavadruta Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare He Prabhu Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Nishingade Jayo Nishingade Jayo Nishingade Jayo Nishingade Jayo Nishingade Nishingade Jayo Narahari Jayo Narahari Jayo Narahari Jayo Narahari Narahari Jayo Narahari Jayo Narihari Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Prahlad Mara Jayo Prahlad Mara Prahlad Mara Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Sri Bhakti Pada Sarvighnashana Kanishingadev Bhagwan ki jai Bhakta Shrestha Prahlad Maharaj ki jai Gaura Hari Pramanande Hari Hari Bo Shivrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradede Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradede Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vrindayai tulasi devai priyayai kesava satya Krishna bhakti pradevi sattvatai namo namo Vrindayai tulasi devai priyayai kesava satya Jai Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Yein Abilasi Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Yein Abilasi ये तुम्हारा शरणालो तारा वांछा पूर्णा हो कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावनवासी मोरा ये विलास विलास कुंजे दियो वास नाया नाहेरी बो सादा युगल रूपरासी ये निवेदनादारा सकीरानुगता कोरो सेवाधिकारा दिए कोरो निजदासी दीना कृष्ण दासे कोई यही ये ना मोरा हो श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा ये नबासी श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा ये नबासी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माद्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणपदे पदे यानि कानि च पाप्यानि ब्रह्माद्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणपदे पदे यानि कानि च पाप्यानि ब्रह्माद्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणपदे पदे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल वृंदाय तुलसी देव्याय प्रियाय केशवस्य च विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसी देव्याय प्रियाय केशवस्य च विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः वृंध्याय तुलसी देव्याय प्रियाय केशवस्य च विष्णु भक्ति प्रद देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी की जय।
Service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of his wishes fulfills, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire that you also grant me residence and pleasure groves of Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of the damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me honored servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always say, my love, Shri Radha and Govind, Shrimati Tulsi Maharani, Vrinda Devi ki jai. So the 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided, they are as follows. 1. Blaspheme devotees who dedicate a life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. Consider the names of demigods of Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the order of the spiritual master. 5. 6. 6. To give some interpretation on holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting Lord. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities often Vedas as ritual. 9. To and 10. To not have complete faith. Unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, they are just our desired trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the Father. Vaishnava ki jai. Shri Sikhyastakam ki jai. Chito Darpanama Janam Bhavamahada Vagni Nirvapanam Shri Akariva Chandrika Vitaranam Vidya Badhu Jivanam Anandam Buri Vardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Shradanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Nija Sarva Shaktis तत्रार्पिता नियमिता स्मरणेन काल एतादृशी तव कृपया भगवन् ममापि दुर्दैवमिदृशमिया जनिनानुरागः त्रिनादपि सुनिचेन तरोरपि सहिष्णुना अमानिनमानदेन कीर्तनीया सदा हरि न धनं न जनं न सुन्दरीं कवितं वा जगरीशकामये मम जन्मनि जन्मनीश्वरे भवता भक्तिराहितुकी त्वयि अयि नन्दतनुजकिङ्करं परितं मां विस्मये भवाम्बुधो कृपया तव पादपङ्कज स्थितधूलिसदृशं विचिन्तय नयनं गलोरश्रुधारय वादनं गद्गदरुद्धया गिरा पुलकारिञ्चितं वपु कदा तव नाम ग्रहणे भविष्यति जुगायितं निमिषेण चक्षुषा प्रवृषायितं शून्यायितं जगत् सर्वं गोविन्द विरहेण मे आश्लिष्यवापादरतं पिनष्टु माम् अदर्शनान्मर्महतं करोतु वा जता तथा वा विदधतु लम्पटो मत्प्राणथस्तु सैवनापरः हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। चैतन्य महाप्रभु श्री कृष्ण की जय। महावरन्नाय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायति कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामिने गौरत्विषे नमः। Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes the fire of conditioned life with repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because its present rays the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which all is anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. They are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you have enabled us to easily approach you by holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once we chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a lord and strong in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your casual devotion and service birth after birth. O son of Maharajanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy names? When my and what's my listen to your name. O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and it should remain so. Even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna ki jai. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunata Vintam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakambhitam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padayo Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shmate Bhakti Vedanto Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devim Gauravane Pracharine Nivishesha Sunnavari Pasatyadi Shatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padayo Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shmate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshabhana Vilevi Deitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhurjo Jala Primadhya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namastute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruddhopo Siddhanta Dvantaharine Namagora Kishoraya Sakchavera Murtaye Vipralambhara Sambodhe Panabhujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchit Anandanamine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Birbhava Bhumetsvam Nirdesha Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavaranayo Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnayo Krishna Chaitanya Namine Goratveshe Namaha Panchatattvamakam Krishna Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataro Bhakta Kyam Namame Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanto Radha Kanto Namostute Jayatam Suratopangur Mama Mandamatir Gati Masarvasva Padam Bhojo Radha Madana Mohano Divya Vindaranya Kalpadumadha Shmara Nagara Shingasanasto Shmaradha Shila Govinda Devo Prishtali Visheva Manushmarami Shmara Sara Sarambi Vamshvata Tatastita Karshan Venu Sanar Gopir Gopinata Sri Estuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrisabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikyastakam Ki Jai. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Lakya Viteshu Surabhira Vipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasha Satasambhrama Sevamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaha Vajamin Venum Kwandantamaravindarayalataksham Parambata Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaha Vajamin Alola Chandra Kalasarvanamala Vamsi Ranangadam Pranayakeri Kala Vilasam Syamam Tribangala Litam Niyata Prakasham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaha Vajamin Angani Yasha Sakalendriya Vritimante Pasyanti Panti Karayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujala Vigrasya Vinamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajamin Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Jamavyuvanam Cham Vede Sidurlabham Adurlabham Adma Bhakto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaha Bhajamin Bantam Kutu Sambra Pankangamamyo Vayoratapi Manaso Manipungavanam Sopya Siyar Prapada Shimnya Vichincha Tate Govindamadi Purusham Tamaha Bhajamin Ekwa Pachora Jajitum Jagananda Kutim Yaksharti Rasi Jaganda Chaya Janananta Adantarasta Paramanu Chayantarashtam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaha Bhajamin Jadbhava Bhavitadiyo Manujastataiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanajana Bhusha Shukte yam eva nigama prasitestu vanti. Govindamari purusham tamaham bhajamin. Panta, move. Nindakshima yara tabis tabiri yavini jarupataya kalabi golo ka evani vasakyaratma bhuto govindama di purusham tamaha bhajami premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena shanta sadeva hridayeshu vilokayantim jamsyama sundaram achintya guna swarupam govindamadi purusham tamaha bhajami Rama Moti Shukalani Yamina Tistam Nana Batarama Karor Bhuvanesikintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Parama Pumanyo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaha Bhajamin. Govinda, the Supreme God, He is an eternal, blissful, spiritual person. He has no other origin and He
I worship Govinda, the primary lord, the first progenitor, who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purple trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or gopis.
I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feather, with the figure of beauty, tinged with a hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids.
I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers beautified with the moon locket, whose two hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending form of Shyam Sundar is eternally manifest.
I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of that transcendental figure possesses in himself the full fledged functions of all the organs and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane.
I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas but obtainable by pure, unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and the eternal Purusha. Yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth.
I worship Govinda, the Premvar Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayama by tilling the respiration, or by the Gyanis who try to find out the non differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years.
He is an undifferentiated entity as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him and is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore.
I adore the same Govinda, the primeval Lord, in whose praise men who are imbued with devotion sing the mantra suktas told by the Vedas by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, conveyances, and ornaments.
I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, residing in his own realm, Goloka, with Radha resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities, in the company of her confidantess, Shakhis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasha.
I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Sham Sundara, Krishna himself, with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts, with the eye of devotion, tinged with the salve of love.
I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Nrsimha, Vamana, etc. as his subjective portion. Bhagavad Gita 7.1 purport. शृण्वतां स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः हृदयन्ता हि स्तौ हि अभद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृत्सतं नष्टप्रयेष्व अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भागवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैस्तिकी तदा राजस्तमो भावा कामा लोभदयश्च ये चेत एतैरनाविदं स्थितं सत्त्वे प्रसीदति एवं प्रसन्नमनसो भगवद्भक्तियोगतः भगवत्तत्त्वविज्ञानं मुक्तसङ्गस्य जायते विद्यते हृदयग्रन्थे सिद्ध्यन्ते सर्वसमस्याः क्षीयन्ते च कर्माणि दृष्टा एवात्मनीश्वरे.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as the best fishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
As you hear more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam, from the devotees, I become fixed in devotional service to the Lord.
By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
When these impurities are swept away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the signs of God perfectly.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of Asamsayam Samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the signs of Krishna. Hare Krishna. Bhagavad Gita 9.9. न च मां तानि कर्माणि निबद्धन्ति धनञ्जय उदासीनवाद आसीनम् असक्तं तेषु कर्मसु. Na, never. Cha, also. Ma, me. Tani, all those. Karmani, activities. Nibaddhanti, bind. Dhananjaya, own conqueror of riches. Udasinavad, as neutral. Asinam, situated. Asaktam, without attraction. Teshu, for those. Karmashu, activities. Translation. O Dhananjaya, all his work cannot bind me. All this work cannot bind me. I am ever detached from all these material activities, seated as though neutral. Purport. One should not think in this connection that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no engagement. In this spiritual world, he is always engaged. In the Brahma Samhita 5.6, it is stated, Atmaramasya tasyati prakritya na samagama. He is always involved. In his in his eternal blissful spiritual activities, but he has nothing to do with these material activities. Material activities are being carried on by his different potencies. The Lord is always neutral in the material activities of the created world. This neutrality is mentioned here with the word udasinavat. Although he has control over every minute detail of material activities, he is sitting as if neutral. The example can be given of a high court judge sitting on his bench. By his order, so many things are happening. Someone is being hanged, someone is being put into jail, someone is awarded a huge amount of wealth, but still he is neutral. He has nothing to do with all that gain and loss. Similarly, the Lord is always neutral, although he has his hand in every sphere of activity. In the Vedanta Sutra 2.1.34, it is stated, Vaisamya nairgranye na. He is not situated in the dualities of this material world. He is transcendental to these dualities, nor is he attached to the creation and annihilation of this material world. The living entities take their different forms in the various species of life according to their past deeds, and the Lord doesn't interfere with them.
Chapter 9, Text 10. Madhyachena prakriti suyate sataracharam hetu nanin kaunteya jagadvip parivartate. Maya by me, Maya by me, Adhyakshina by superintendence, Prakriti material nature, Suyate manifest, Sa with, yeah, it says Sa it, okay. Characharam, the moving and the non-moving, Hetuna for the reason, Anena this, Hetuna for the reason, Anena this, Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, Jagat, the cosmic manifestation, Viparivartate is working. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. It is clearly stated here that the Supreme Lord, although aloof from all the activities of the material world, remains the Supreme Director. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Will and the background of this material manifestation. But the management is being conducted by material nature. Krishna also states in Bhagavad Gita that of all the living entities in different forms and species, I am the Father. The father gives seeds to the womb of the mother for the child, and similarly, the Supreme Lord, by his mere glance, injects all the living entities into the womb of the material nature, and they come out in their different forms and species according to their last desires and activities. All these living entities, although born under the glance of the Supreme Lord, take their different bodies according to their past deeds and desires. So the Lord is not directly attached to this material creation. He simply glances over material nature. Material nature is thus activities, and everything is created immediately. Because he glances over material nature, there is undoubtedly activity on the part of the Supreme Lord, but he has nothing to do with the manifestation of the material world directly. This example is given in the Smriti, where when there is a fragrant flower before someone, the fragrance is touched by the smelling flower of the person, yet the smelling and the flower are detached from another. There is similar connection between the material world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, he has nothing to do with this material world, but he creates by his glance and audience. In summary, material nature, without the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, cannot do anything. Yet the Supreme Personality of Godhead is detached from all material activities. Hare Krishna.
9.11 Avachanti mammudha manusim tanum asritam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram avajanti avajananti deride. Mom, me, Buddha, foolish man, manusim, in a human form, tanum, a body, ashritam, assuming, param, transcendental, bhavam, nature, Ta, not knowing. Mama, Mama, my. Bhuta, of everything that be. Maha Shvaram Ishvaram, Maha Ishvaram, the supreme proprietor. Translation. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord of all that be. Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. From the other explanations of the previous verse in this chapter, it is clear that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although appearing like a human being, is not a common man. The Personality of Godhead, who conducts the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the complete cosmic manifestation, cannot be a human being. Yet, there are many foolish men who consider Krishna to be merely a powerful man and nothing more. Actually, he is the original Supreme Personality, as is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. Ishvara Paramaha Krishna. He is the Supreme Lord. There are many Ishvaras, controllers, and one appears greater than the other. In the ordinary management of affairs in the material world, we find some official or director, and above him there is secretary, and above him a minister, and above him a president. Each of them is a controller, but one is controlled by another. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that Krishna is the supreme controller. There are many controllers undoubtedly, both in the material and spiritual worlds, but Krishna is the supreme controller, Ishvara Parama Krishna, and his body is Satchitananda, non-material. Material bodies cannot perform the wonderful acts described in previous verses. His body is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. Although he is not a common man, the foolish deride him and consider him to be a man. His body is called Manusim. Is called here Manusim because he is acting just like a man, a friend of Arjuna's, a politician involved in the battle of Kurukshetra. In so many ways, he is acting just like an ordinary man, but actually his body is Satchitananda Vigraha, eternal bliss and knowledge and absolute, and knowledge absolute. This is confirmed in the Vedic language also. Satchitananda Rupaya Krishnaya. I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, who is the eternal blissful from form of knowledge. Gopalitapina Upanishad 1.1. There are other descriptions in the Vedic language also. Tam ekam govindam. You are Govinda, the pleasure of the senses and the cows. Satchitananda Vigraham. And your form is transcendental, full of knowledge, bliss, and eternal eternality. Gopala Tapina Upanishad 1.35. 35. Despite the transcendental quality of Lord Krishna's body, its full bliss and knowledge, there are many so-called scholars and commenters, commentators of Bhagavad Gita who deride Krishna as many ordinary man. As in. You said on, not N. As an ordinary man. This scholar may be born an extraordinary man due to his previous good work, but his conception of Sri Krishna is due to a poor fund of knowledge. Therefore, he is called Muddha. For only foolish persons consider Krishna to be an ordinary human being. The foolish consider Krishna an ordinary human being because they do not know the confidential activities of the Supreme Lord and his different energies. They do not know that Krishna's body is a symbol of complete knowledge and bliss, that he is the proprietor of everything, and that he can award liberation to anyone. Because they do not know that Krishna has so many transcendental qualifications, they deride him. Nor do they know that the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this material world, is a manifestation of his eternal energy. He is the master of the material energy, as has been explained in several places. Maya Durotyaya. He claims that the material energy, although very powerful, is under his control, and whoever surrenders unto him can get out of the control of this material energy. If a soul surrendered to Krishna can get out of the influence of material energy, then how can the Supreme Lord, who conducts the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the whole cosmic nature, have a material body like us? So this conception of Krishna is complete foolishness. Foolish persons, however, cannot conceive that the personality of God, Krishna, appearing just like an ordinary man, can be the controller of all the atoms and of the gigantic manifestation of the material form. The biggest and the minutest are beyond their conception, so they cannot imagine what a form like that of a human being can simultaneously control the infinite and the minute. Actually, although he is controlling the infinite and the finite, he is apart from all this manifestation. It is clearly stated concerning his yogam Aishvaram, his his yogam Aishvaram, his inconceivable transcendental energy, that he can control the infinite and the finite simultaneously, and that he can remain aloof from them. Although the foolish cannot imagine how Krishna, who appears just like a human being, can control the infinite and infinite. Those who are pure devotees accept this, for they know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, they completely surrender unto Him and engage in Krishna consciousness devotional service of the Lord. There are many controversies between the impersonalists and the personalists about the Lord's appearance as a human being. But if we consult Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the authoritative texts for understanding the signs of Krishna, then we can understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is not an ordinary man. Although he appeared on this earth as an ordinary human, in the Srimad Bhagavatam first canto, first chapter, when the sages headed by Saunaka inquired about the activities of Krishna, they said, Kritavan Kila Karmani Sahar Vrema Ramena Keshava Ati Marta Yani Bhagavan Buddha Guda Kapata Manusa. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with Balarama, played like a human being. And so, masked, he performed many superhuman acts. Bhagavad Gita Bhagavatam 1.1.20. The Lord's appearance as a man bewilders the foolish. So no human being could perform the wonderful acts that Krishna performed while he was present on this earth. When Krishna appeared before his father and mother, Vasudeva and Devaki, he appeared with 4 hands. But after the prayers of the parents, he transformed himself into an ordinary child, as stated in the Bhagavatam 10.3.46. Babuva Prakrita Sishu. He became just like an ordinary child, an ordinary human being. Now, here again, it is indicated that the Lord's appearance as an ordinary human being is one of the features of his transcendental body. In the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, also it is stated that Arjuna prayed to see Lord Krishna's form of 4 hands. Tenaiva Rupena Chaturbhujena. After revealing this from Krishna, when this form Krishna, when petitioned by Arjuna, again assumed his original human-like form, Manusham Rupam. These different features of the Supreme Lord are certainly not those of an ordinary human being. Some of those who deride Krishna and who are infected with the Mayavadi philosophy quote the following verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam 3.29.21 to prove that Krishna is an ordinary man. Aham sarveshu bhuteshu Bhuta Bhuta Bhutatma Vashvita Sada. The Supreme is present in every living entity. We should better take note of this particular verse from the Vaishnava acharyas like Jiva Goswami and Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura, instead of following the interpretation of unauthorized persons who deride Krishna. Jiva Goswami, commenting on this verse, says that Krishna in his plenary expansions as Paramatma is situated in the moving and non-moving entities as the Supersoul. So any neophyte devotee who simply gives his attention to the Archamurti, the form of the Supreme Lord in the temple, and does not respect other living entities is uselessly worshipping the form of the Lord in the temple. There are the three kinds of devotees of the Lord. In the neophyte is the lowest stage. The neophyte devotee gives more attention to the deity in the temple than to the other devotees. So, Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura warns that this sort of mentality should be corrected. A devotee should see that because Krishna is present in everyone's heart as Paramatma, every body is the embodiment of the or the temple of the Supreme Lord. So as one offers respect to the temple of the Lord, he should similarly properly respect each and every body in which the Paramatma dwells. Everyone should therefore be given proper respect and should not be neglected. There are also many impersonalists who deride temple worship. They say that since God is everywhere, why should one restrict himself to the temple worship? But if God is everywhere, is he not in the temple or in the deity? Although the personalist and the impersonalist will fight with one another perpetually, a perfect devotee in Krishna consciousness knows that although Krishna is the Supreme Personality, he is all-pervading. As confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, although his personal abode is Goloka Vrindavana and he is always staying there by his different manifestations of energy and by his plenary expansion, he is present everywhere in all parts of the material and spiritual creation. 9.12.
Text 12, chapter 9. Mogasa moga karmano moga gnana vijetasaha raksasim asurim chaiva prakritim mohinam shruta. Mogasha, baffled in their hopes. Moga karmana, baffled in fruitive activities. Moga gnana, baffled in knowledge. Vichetasa, bewildered. Raksasim, demonic. Asurim, atheistic. Cha, and. Eva, certainly. Prakritim, nature. Mohinim, bewildering. Shrita, taking shelter of. Translation. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demonic and atheistic views. In the deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. Purport: there are many devotees who assume themselves to be in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, but at heart do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna as the absolute truth. For them, the fruit of devotional service going back to Godhead will never be tasted. Similarly, those who are engaged in fruitive, pious activities and who are ultimately hoping to be liberated from this material entanglement will never be successful either, because they deride the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. In other words, persons who mock Krishna are to be understood to be demonic or atheistic. As described in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, such demonic miscreants never surrender to Krishna. Therefore, their mental speculations to arrive at the absolute truth bring them to the false conclusion that the ordinary living entity and Krishna are one and the same. With such a false conviction, they think that the body of any human being is now simply covered by material nature, and that as soon as one is liberated from this material world, there is no difference between God and himself. This attempt to become one with Krishna will be baffled because of delusion. Such atheistic and demoniac cultivation of spiritual knowledge is always futile. That is the indication of this verse. For such persons, cultivation of the knowledge in the Vedic literature, like the Vedanta Sutra and the Upanishads, is always baffled. It is a great offense, therefore, to consider Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to be an ordinary man. Those who do so are certainly deluded because they cannot understand the eternal form of Krishna. The Bruhad Vishnu Smriti clearly states, Sovitti Bhautikam Deham Krishnaya Paramatmanah Sasarvasmad Bhaiskarya Shrautasmarta Vidanatah Mukam Tasya Valokyapi Sachalam Snanamacharet. One who considers the body of Krishna to be material should be driven out from all rituals and activities of the Shruti and the Smriti. And if one by chance sees his face, one should at once take bath in the Ganges to rid himself of infection. People jeer at Krishna because they are envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their destiny is certainly to take birth after birth in the species of atheistic and demoniac life. Perpetually, their real knowledge will remain under delusion, and gradually they will regress to the darkest region of creation.
Nine point 13 Mahatmanasto Mam Bharata Daivim Prakritim Ashruta Bhajante Hananya Manaso Janatva Jatva Bhutadmi Avyayam. Mahatmana, the great souls. 2. But Mam, unto me, Partha, O son of Partha, Daiviyam, divine, Prakritim, nature, Ashrita, having taken shelter of, Bhajanti, render service, Ananya Manasa, without deviation of the mind, Jnatva, knowing, Bhuta, of creation, Admi, the origin, Avyayam, inexhaustible. Translation by Prabhupada. O son of Partha, those who are not deluded, the great souls are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, virginal and inexhaustible. Purport by Prabhupada. In this verse, the description of the Mahatma is clearly given. The first sign of the Mahatma is that he is already situated in the divine nature. He is not under the control of material nature. And how is this affected? That is explained in the 7th chapter. One who surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, at once becomes freed from the control of material nature. That is the qualification. One can become free from the control of material nature as soon as he surrenders his soul to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the preliminary formula. Being marginally potency, as soon as the living entity is freed from the control of material nature, is put under the guidance of the spiritual nature. The guidance of the spiritual nature is called Daivi Prakriti, divine nature. So, when one is promoted in that way, by surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one attains to the stage of Great Soul, Mahatma. The Mahatma does not divert his attention to anything outside Krishna because he knows perfectly well that Krishna is the original Supreme Person, the causes of all causes. There is no doubt about it. Such a Mahatma or great soul develops through association with other Mahatmas, pure devotees. Pure devotees are not even attracted by Krishna's other features, such as the four-armed Mahavishnu. They are simply attracted by the two-armed form of Krishna. They are not even attracted to other features of Krishna, nor are they concerned with any form of a demigod or of a human being. They meditate upon they meditate only upon Krishna in Krishna consciousness. They are always engaged in the unswavering service of the Lord in Krishna consciousness.
Shlok 9.14 Satatam kirtayanto mam yatanshra darvrtaha namasyantascha mam bhaktya nityayukta upasate. Satatam, always. Kirtanto, chanting. Mam, about me. Yatantah, fully endeavoring. Cha, also. Dhan, vrittah, with determination. Namasyantasya, offering obeisances. Cha, and. Mam, me. Bhaktya, in devotion. Nitya yukta, perpetually engaged. Upasate, worship. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Mahatma can't be manufactured by rubber stamping an ordinary man. His symptoms are described here. A Mahatma is always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. He has no other business. He is always engaged in the glorification of the Lord. In other words, he is not an impersonalist. When the question of glorification is there, one has to glorify the Supreme Lord, praising His holy name, His eternal form, His transcendental qualities, and His uncommon pastimes. One has to glorify all these things, therefore, a Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who is attached to the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, the Brahma Jyoti, is not described as Mahatma in the Bhagavad Gita. He is described in a different way in the next verse. The Mahatma is always engaged in different activities of devotional service, as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing and chanting about Vishnu, not a demigod or human being. That is devotion. Sarvanam Kirtanyam Vishnu and Smaranam, remembering him. Such a Mahatma has firm determination to achieve at the ultimate end the association of the Supreme Lord in any of the five transcendental races. To achieve that success, he engages all activities, mental, bodily, and vocal, everything, in the service of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. that is called full Krishna consciousness. In devotional service, there are certain activities which are called determined, such as fasting on certain days, like the 11th day of the moon, Ekadashi, and on the appearance day of the Lord. All these rules and regulations are offered by the great acharyas for those who are actually interested in getting admission into the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the transcendental world. The Mahatmas, great souls, strictly observe all these rules and regulations, and therefore they are sure to achieve the desired result. As described in the second verse of this chapter, not only is this devotional service easy, but it can be performed in a happy mood. One does not need to undergo any severe penance and austerity. He can live this life in devotional service, guided by an expert spiritual master, and in any position, either as a householder or a sannyasi or a brahmachari, in any position and anywhere in the world. He can perform this devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus become actually Mahatma, a great soul.
ज्ञानयज्ञेन चाप्यन्ते यजन्तो मामुपासते एकत्वेन पृथक्त्वेन बहुधा विश्वतो मुखम्. Gyan yajnena, by cultivation of knowledge, cha, also, api, certainly, anye, others, yajanta, sacrificing, mam, me, upasate, worship, ekatvena, in oneness, prathakvena, in duality, bahudha, in diversity, viswatah mukham, and in the universal form. Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diversity in many, and in the universal form. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The verse is the summary of the previous verses. The Lord tells Arjun that those who are purely in Krishna consciousness and do not know anything other than Krishna are called Mahatma. Yet there are other persons who are not exactly in the position of Mahatma but who worship Krishna also in different ways. Some of them already have been described as the distressed, the financially destitute, the inquisitive, and who are engaged in the cultivation of knowledge. But there are others who are still lower, and these are divided into three. He who worships he who worships himself as one with the Supreme Lord. He who concocts some form of the Supreme Lord and worships that. And three, he who accepts the universal form, the Vishwaroop of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and worships that. Out of above three, the lowest, those who worship themselves as the Supreme Lord, thinking themselves to be monists, are most predominant. Such people think themselves to be the Supreme Lord, and in the mentality they worship themselves. This is also a type of God worship, for they can understand that they are not the material body but are actually a spiritual soul. At least such a sense is prominent. Generally, the impersonalists worship the Supreme Lord in this way. The second class includes the worshippers of the demigods, those who by imagination considers any form to be the form of Supreme Lord. And the third class includes those who cannot conceive of anything beyond the manifestation of this material universe. They consider the universe to be the supreme organism or entity and worship that. The universe is also a form of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Baba, Daddy, you sing. You have nothing else to do.
You want to sing? What?
I'll try singing, but I have to put that in on. Daddy, you can sing and play the instrument. Daddy, at least can you get the other one?
जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा श्री गुरु चरण पद्मा केवल भक्ति सद्मा बंध मोहि सावधान माते जहर प्रसादे भाई ए भव तोरिया जाय कृष्ण प्राप्ति हो जहाँ होते कृष्ण प्राप्ति हो जहाँ होते गुरुमुख पद्मा वाक्या चितते कोरिया क्या अरना कोरी हो मने आशा श्री गुरु चरणे रति ऐसे उत्तम गति जय प्रसादे पूरे सर्व आशा जय प्रसादे पूरे सर्व आशा चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो પ્રેમ ભક્તિ જાહા હોય તે અવિદ્યા વિનાશા જાય તે વેદે ગાય જાહર ચરિતો લોકનાથ લોકેર જીવાના હા પ્રભુ કરો દયા દેહો મોરે પદ છાયા હે બેજાજ ગુશિક ત્રિભુવાના શીલા પ્રભુપાદ લોઈ લો શરણ શીલા પ્રભુપાદ પતિત પવન જય પ્રભુપાદા જય પ્રભુપાદા જય પ્રભુપાદા જય પ્રભુપાદા जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jai Shila Prabhupada ki Jai.
The lotus feet of a spiritual master is the only way by which he can turn to the
I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates, by him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Loknath Goswami, O Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. We take the shelter of lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada ki jai. shelter, clothes, nice toys, nice.
I don't have that many things, but it's okay.